Watch out. Good morning, everyone. Today I'm going to talk about my Fun for Teachers Fellowship and give you a little synopsis about what I did, but I want to spend more time about how I feel it really changed me as a teacher, how I feel it made me a better teacher, and more importantly, made me better for my students. So back in 2005, I was fortunate enough to receive a fellowship to go to Costa Rica. To give you some background, I was finishing up my fourth year as a teacher. As I'd mentioned to someone here today, it wasn't really until my third year that I felt like I was a real teacher. I was, juggling with all the things of being a new teacher. And even my fourth year, I was still struggling with a lot of different things. And here are some of the needs that I felt were really difficult that really, when I saw the opportunity with Fun for Teachers, I just jumped on it. Over half my students are native Spanish speakers, and although all of them speak English, a lot of their parents do not. And that, I realized, was a huge barrier, because when I needed to call home, when we had parent meetings, it really was a struggle. So that was something that came to the surface right away. But then in addition to that, I'm a science teacher. We have a unified science curriculum. I had 2 units in particular that, although I felt I had a strong content knowledge and I felt really well versed in the curriculum that we used, I didn't have a lot of first-hand experience in these 2 content areas, diversity of life and Earth history in particular. So that's what was the impetus to get me to apply for the Fun for Teachers grant. And so the goals of my project were twofold. One was the Spanish language immersion, which I put that at the base because that really was my primary concern, because I identified that that would have the biggest impact on over half my students. But in addition to that, I wasted a wonderful opportunity. I was going to Costa Rica. I was going to an area called Monteverde, which is in the mountains. It's Green Mountains, and it's cloud forest, rainforest, and great opportunity to explore those 2 curriculum content areas. So I can get more than willing to answer any questions you have later or informally around the campfire about what I did specifically, but I want to show you what came out of that, because that to me was what was so powerful. There were 2 outcomes that, as you can imagine, met the goals that I had, and I felt like I really achieved the goals I set forth, that I planned for. One was, by the end of the 4 weeks that I was there, I should step back, I was in an immersion program where 5.5 hours a day of nothing but Spanish. I lived with a host family. I was in a community where there were not a lot of English speakers, so it was kicking me out of the nest and forcing me to learn Spanish. Similar to what we do with a lot of our students in Boston. So it was something that I'll talk about later. I left that 4 weeks feeling I was functionally fluent in conversational Spanish. I could carry on a conversation all day long. Grammatical mistakes left and right, gaps in my vocabulary, but the point was I felt like I could communicate with these families. And I can't speak enough about that. I could do a whole presentation on that, but the ability to talk with the parents, have them come in and not wait for a translator, not have to look at someone else and then look back at me. I really can't put words to that. Just seeing the look on their faces when they heard Spanish coming out of my mouth and seeing their walls go down. That was amazing. And then just having the science connection, actually walking on, like for example, this was Monteverde. It's surrounded by clouds, the top part of the mountain for a good part of the year. It's a special class of similar to rainforest. The mountains were formed very young in geological history. Central America is new compared to North and South America. There's a huge diversity of ecosystems, so that was impressive. Large diversity of plant-animal life that tied directly to my curriculum, and so that was important. And again, I could answer questions about that. But what I want to spend the rest of my time talking about are the outcomes I didn't see coming. These are things I didn't write in my proposal. These are things I didn't say, oh, I want this to happen. And I realized them after I came back. First of all, I didn't realize how much being a second language learner myself would help my second language learners in my classroom. Spending only a month in their shoes has given me such an appreciation for the challenges, the anxieties, the fears, the doubts, all of that, the lack of confidence that I see my students now struggling with a lot. And it's given me a lot of courage to now reach out to them in different ways that I think I was completely oblivious to before. So that was a huge thing. Having a cultural connection, again, I knew I would have some of this, but again, just the little things I just didn't plan on. I went to Costa Rica. A lot of my kids come from Dominican Republic and Puerto Rico, but there are a lot of similarities in dress, in food, in dance, in music, And when I was talking about my trip, and I've since, I incorporate it into my, everyday, as I talk about my curriculum, I'll refer to Costa Rica. Just seeing, having those little side-to-side conversations. I've heard some people here talk about that, about forming those relationships with the kids, grabbing a minute here, talking during the lunchtime, or even building into my class. If I would talk to the kids like, oh, I love, this is called gallo pinto on the right. It's a traditional Costa Rican dish, rice and beans. A lot of Latin cultures have it. And we would compare notes. We would, quote unquote, argue about which one was the best. Again, just having that connection with the kids. I can't speak enough about that. This was another powerful one. Using the experiences that I had in my classroom to create extensions to what I was doing. Again, I really wanted to have a firm understanding of the content in my district mandated curriculum. But what it really kind of gave me the courage to do is kind of find ways to expand upon that. There's some resistance to that in the district, but I've done it anyway, so don't snitch on me. One of the things that's really big, obviously, is literacy and science. When we moved to a kit-based science program, it turned out we went from an all textbook curriculum to having almost no textual support at all. And that's something we've been struggling with as a district. And this is a book that Fun for Teachers paid for, so thank you very much. This is actually called Monteverde, Science and Scientists in a Costa Rican Cloud Forest. And it's little vignettes about scientists and what they do. So it's very usable to like photocopy or talk about a little short story about scientists. Leafcutter ants. Some of you saw me taking pictures of some ants today. Since Costa Rica, I've been fascinated by ants and as a species. And leafcutters, really quickly, these little guys over here, they cut leaves. If you don't know this, they cut the leaves. They don't eat them. They take them back to their nest and they mulch it up and they feed it to a fungus. And then they eat the fungus that grows. They are the first, this is agriculture. This is what predates humans, and they are experts at it. And I try to incorporate that in my classroom. Putting me in the classroom. What I mean by this is this. I found that when I talked about me, when I showed a picture, when we were talking about volcanoes, and I showed that I hiked up the side of a volcano, when I told the kids, I looked down and I could see the steam coming up, and I could smell the sulfur coming out of the mouth of the volcano. When I told the kids I picked these berries here, and I picked them, they stained my fingers, they would then be shucked, and then the bean would be laid out in the sun to dry, and then they would roast it, and that's how you make coffee. The kids were just, just those little things of having me in there made a big difference, I found. And then just showing these are pictures I took when it's the ooh factor, but it's such a great hook. Showing the kids that slug was almost in my shoe one morning when I woke up. We do a unit on gastropods. This spider was right next to my keys as I was reaching for it. Again, little things like that, it's like sprinkling the seasoning on the food. It brings it alive, and it's been really, really helpful. And then, of course, the joys of being a lifelong learner. I hope with my kids, I really express that to them. I talk about my trip. I talk about the things I've learned. I talk about how I didn't know much about leafcutter ants before I went to Costa Rica, and how now I'm passionate about it. And I like to think I've also modeled that for some of my colleagues. I've had colleagues come up to me and show an interest in, you know what, I really want to learn Spanish too, or I would like to do, Fun for Teachers grant. And so it's something that's been very, very good. In my time remaining, I want to read a quick journal entry, and I'll explain why in a moment. This is from when I was actually there. Life is simpler here. There are much fewer amenities here, awful roads, no cable television, no fast internet, no store open all night, no Target or CVS, no gym, no DVD player, no Starbucks. Yet life goes on, and it goes on well. Life is good, and not simply as a cliche on some T-shirt. I'm happy, I'm challenged, I've met very nice people. I'm eating wonderful food that seems to be very healthy. I'm walking a lot. I'm not watching any television. I'm shopping at local independent stores. I'm taking more photos. I'm writing in my journal. I'm living with only 2 suitcases worth of material possessions. Life is good. Life here is simpler. The layers of complexity have, for me, been peeled away, and the core is good. And I wrote that back then. The reason why I want to read that now is Fun for Teachers, is kind of my little side thank you, is that had such a profound impact on me personally. And while at first they're like, well, why is he talking about that here? Because that changed who I was in the classroom. because I found that gave me a lot of center, and I think about that, and I think about how that's changed me, because who you are inside affects who you are in front of your students. And so I just want to end there, because that was a very powerful part of the whole experience. So thank you very much.
FFT is getting a little data that you're getting good return on your investment, I would say. 3 minutes, Mitch.
I just want to say authenticity, being someone who teaches kids and teaches science, and you absolutely love people and you love science, and that comes through.
Ethan?
I was going to say, yeah, it definitely, like not only the unit I taught from Fun for Teachers, like I can definitely, everything you're saying, it's like, it's when you resonate with something, it's like you have a bell inside that every word you're saying is like ringing inside. I remembered all the moments in my classroom, and so it definitely brings things to life when you can say things like that. And it widens students' world, that you realize that, especially like in the city, they only see the city, and you can bring things in like that, and they understand that it's possible to, you don't have to be rich to have like certain experiences even right outside and things like that. And the more authentic that you can make the learning, and as an example as yourself, like as actually practicing what you're trying to teach them is really powerful for kids. So, amazing presentation.
Ari?
I found it interesting that it really seemed like the experience helped you connect, like not only your science but also yourself. And I think other people have touched more on like the independent, but usually like seamlessly kind of strung together, in a way that like it was, both of them became easier for you to do, maybe, or like just like because of your science, because they were like so interconnected when you were there, then it transferred automatically into the classroom.
James?
Yeah, I just make a comment and say that, yeah, it seems as if just from listening and looking around, it seems as if a lot of people are making a push to make the classroom or make the students adapt to the teaching style, where actually you adapt yourself to match the classroom environment. So that's something I commend. It's great.
Okay.
I definitely caught on to the fact that you said you didn't consider yourself a real teacher until your third year, because that is a requirement of Fun for Teachers application. You have to have 3 years of teaching experience in order to apply, and not being in the classroom, it's easy for us to say that you're not a real teacher until your third year, but I mean, it's emphasis, for you to say it, it has much more of an impact and validates that restriction that we've placed on it.
Anne?
It reminded me of Rachel's presentation, because we're learning through our bodies, and if the physical body of your teacher goes to another country, it's not Carmen Sandiego, it's not Waldo, it's not that city, it's like the physical body. And that's why we need play tickets, and that's partly why it has to be this physical thing.
I wrote down the quote, like the sprinkling the seasoning on the food. I just really love that analogy, and that you can have a bland classroom, but with those connections and learning Spanish, I think your kids must be so excited, the new flavors they got from your trip and everything. That really was an awesome analogy.
Okay.
I'd love to hear you talk a little bit more about the relationship with the parents. I think.
Okay.
10 minutes. 20 minutes. No, I'm kidding. Yeah, authenticity, widening the student's world, that was such an important part, and it is such an important part of my teaching, because I feel like if I can't, I've learned that now that I'm no longer a third-year teacher. It's like, if I can't be me, I don't want to do it. It's just, I feel like I'm being fake, and I think about what Sam said, about keeping it real. With my kids, they pick up right away if you're being fake. And so I just learned to love who I am and share that with the kids, and I found there's like a dialogue, there's an exchange. I mean, I've had it, and again, it's like I'm showing them my love of the outdoors and my experiences, and they're teaching me how to do the Dougie. So it's like it's great interplay. Adapting my students, thank you. I like to think that I do that, so thank you. I'm glad someone saw that. So where was that? Seasoning, yeah. Having a district mandated curriculum sometimes can feel a little restrictive. I do like the fact that I think it addresses a lot of the needs of our kids. I like the fact that I can play within that fence, and so having that seasoning, being able to make it alive for the kids, so it isn't just something that, oh yeah, we're having to do this, and I don't want to be, again, that kind of teacher. And the self-injecting myself into that. A little disclaimer for those of you who haven't already heard. I'm not saying this should be in every Fun for Teachers proposal, but I didn't propose this, but an unexpected outcome, and the reason why I have such a strong connection too is I did meet the person who is now my wife when I was there, and so I have kept that connection beyond. I mean, I think I still would have for many reasons, but it's been a little bit easier, so I will have that disclaimer. And then lastly, the parents. Again, it's just been amazing being able to work with the parents. The parents, I think they respect the fact that I am speaking in their language. They're not having to turn to someone else. Their anxiety goes down. Their comfort level, where are norms? The norm of them, I forget how it was worded, but of them speaking up, of them being courageous enough, or I forget how it was worded, reaching out. I see them doing that when I'm able to meet with them and speak to them in Spanish. And they're surprised because they look at me like, who's this half Asian teacher? He speaks Spanish. And my kids, I don't tell my kids in September, I let them kind of discover it, and they run home and they tell their parents, and their parents on open house night will be, oh, you're the teacher. So, yeah, so, thank you. Oh.